This is a very, very special edition of Brad Stine Has Issues. And the reason I say that is not just because I'm here, because I'm special, but because I have a guest on who is really doing something that is pretty rare in Brad Stine Has Issues. We've been around a few years. Is that she's coming back on only weeks after she had been on before. No, this is even more important, even more exciting, even more amazing. This is a miraculous praise report, if we want to use Christianese, that has had a resolve, a resolution. And wait till you get a load of this. I hope it's inspiring to you guys. And I hope if you're going through difficulties in your life, whatever it might be, and we all do or will, we need to see people in front of us who've said, I've been there. Let me show you how to get through it. And that's exactly what's about to happen. Joeylynn Mesaros and her husband, that I met a number of years ago, was sued by the Biden administration because they were following a bus with, I think, Joe Biden and, or at least his people. And they were sued by them by saying that they were trying to run them off the road and that they were trying to keep them from voting. And they really just made an incredible slander of their reputations and who they were, and took them to court and had all the funds to do that. So this little couple in Texas pulled up their bootstraps, and guess what? They just may have a nice, interesting postscript to the conversation we had just a month or so ago. And I'm going to let her tell you. Please welcome back Joeylynn Mesaros. Hello.
Hi, Brad. I am thrilled to be here and to give you an update. I feel like your viewers can probably already tell that it's an awesome update, that we definitely have a praise report.
Yes.
God gave us the victory through 4 years of torturous abuse, 1,045 days of lawfare tactics, tying our hands behind our back, gagging us literally and metaphorically. We went into that courtroom and the jury upheld the Constitution, which is an ever-loving miracle, Brad, because as we'll get into it today, the Constitution was not allowed to be referenced in our trial. The First Amendment was redefined by the judge, watered down, and then given to the jury. It is an absolute miracle, and it points only to God that we were able to bring a win home for the American people's free speech rights.
Well, bravo, congratulations, glory be to God. All of the accolades that we can come up with, all of the wonderful praises and joyful ideas and concepts and thoughts that we can spew out into the atmosphere. Of course, it's an exciting thing, but there's so much that you just added to your little praise report that obviously needs to be discussed in detail, because it refers to the future of what other people might have to endure. And the good news is, whenever a case is adjudicated, it can become case law.
Yes.
Or at least be an addendum to a previous case law that was cited that allowed this to move into the direction it landed. So I don't know which part of that chain you guys are on, and maybe we'll find out. But either way, it's always good to get a verdict that references free speech, because that can help other people down the road, perhaps in a similar situation they might find themselves in. But I was thinking about when I wanted to bring you back in. Maybe I was going to show a clip of our first conversation a few weeks ago, because just to give them the context. But I thought, well, you know what? Maybe it'd just be better to start fresh, because you can consolidate it better. So before we move into all of the interesting details of what took place, quickly summarize for somebody who's listening for the first time what actually happened to you and your husband, when it happened, what took place, where did you end up? So that when we move into the next phase of this, it'll all have a context.
Yes, absolutely. Great idea, Brad. So my husband and I in 2020, we were new to politics. You and I discussed that I wasn't really involved. I wasn't sure if we were going to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. My son was still in public school. I was shopping at Target, drinking Starbucks. And we were just starting to wake up and to think differently. And it was because of the Make America Great Again movement, we started paying attention to what was going on. We realized that Trump's values and policies, or Trump's policies, aligned with our values as Christians. And we wanted to learn more about that. We joined a local Trump train, which was a type of parade or caravan that happened in 2020, pretty popular, where you would put flags on the back of your vehicles and drive around and get people excited about voting for Donald Trump. And when the Biden-Harris campaign bus drove through our town in New Braunfels, Texas, we thought it would be an awesome way to show our support for Donald Trump. And we hoped to make the news because we were already making the news just for the sheer size of the Trump trains weeks before that. And so when that Biden Harris campaign bus drove through Texas, we drove alongside of it and we were excited to show our support for President Trump. We wanted to make the news. And what wound up happening is that the media characterized this as an ambush, that we were political extremists, domestic terrorists, threats to democracy, that we were trying to run the bus off the road, that we were trying to prevent minorities from voting. And they were using it to leverage kind of the frantic emotions of people at that heightened time of early election to steer people into voting for Joe Biden. Since I was new to politics, I was new to the media, I was very surprised at how they mischaracterized what we were doing there. And what really shocked me was 8 months later, they brought, and when I say they, I'm talking about Biden's White House officials, Biden Harris campaign staffers that were on the bus, and Democrat politicians, very high profile individuals, brought this federal lawsuit against us under the Ku Klux Klan Law in federal court, claiming that we gave them emotional damage from what was our exercise of free speech. So they're essentially riding the hysterics of the media, and then they're slapping us with a lawsuit in civil court. But man, they make it look like we're criminals in the media. Right now, people are perceiving us as white supremacists, actual threats, domestic terrorists, so on and so forth. We start receiving death threats. You know, it was like impossible to have a voice for ourselves and advocate for ourselves when the media is painting the picture one way and we're just average Americans. And so we reached out to many nonprofits for financial aid so that we could fight back. We knew we didn't do anything wrong. We were just learning we had a constitutional right to free speech. We knew we wanted to guarantee those freedoms for our child and other generations. And we wanted to fight back, but we didn't have the resources to do it. We cashed out our 401k and retained the only attorney that was willing to take us. We fought for 4 years through the process of this litigation, which was discovery, you know, turning over every blessed text message, social media, metadata. I'm talking like huge amounts of data, turning over cell phones, emails. Our lives were ripped open and ripped apart. They hired private investigative agencies to follow us around, capture everything we said and did so that they could use it against us for 4 years. They hired expert witnesses to report that we were political extremists, that we were threats to democracy. And I use these terms because those are the terms they were using. You and I have discussed it's obviously a constitutional republic if we can keep it. So of course it's a threat to their concept of democracy or mobocracy. But again, they create this hysterics and they put a gag order on us where we're not able to talk about the details of this case. We have an Obama appointed judge, our jury trial in Austin. They're using all the same lawfare tactics against Trump, against average Americans that support him. And so after 4 long and torturous years where they tried to force us to settle, we fought that motion. We got a court date, headed to trial. And in the courtroom, Brad, I was expecting to have my day in court. And I can't wait to tell you what a sham trial and kangaroo court that was. But hopefully that catches people up on the last 4 years to now the fight that we just had in the courtroom a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so that's perfect synopsis. I appreciate it. I'm sure you've told this a million times, but it's just important because again, just assuming that if nobody knows who you are or what's going on, that now they do.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the key is nothing you said is surprising to anybody that's been paying attention over the last number of years. The idea that the federal government under the Democrats, it's simply what is happening, have used it to go after citizens. And this has started a long time ago. I mean, I remember the IRS, you know, going after citizens who are trying to get 501c3s, you know, and
Yes.
conservative groups and so forth. Lois Lerner and was found proof that she literally targeted conservatives. Well, that's illegal, and there should be a cost to that. And of course, there is none. There's no cost to being left leaning and attacking your opponents, as long as you're on their side. And now that's evil. That's totalitarian. That's unjust, and it certainly is not freedom. So it's important that we either care or don't care about liberty and freedom. Now, the sad truth is many Americans don't. They think they do until a coronavirus shows up. And then you see, as they walk around with their fifth vax and their rainbow excitement about how much they are helping the world with their double masks, they have given their liberty. They are long gone. These people are in a cult. It's religious, and they are fully committed. There's no way to get them home. But there's still those in the middle trying to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys come in. Just another piece of the puzzle of how free are we and how can we keep a republic. So you guys go to trial, and they basically indicted you under the Ku Klux Klan law. So what is that? Like a domestic terrorist, or what exactly are you being framed as?
So the Ku Klux Klan Law was a law that was put into place in the 1800s to protect recently freed slaves from doing things like working, voting, going to school, because the Ku Klux Klan, which we know to be aligned with the Democrat Party, was physically restraining these people from being able to do those things to the point of killing them. And so there was a law put into place to hold these people accountable, to protect the freedoms, the newfound freedoms that these people were entitled to. And the caveat of this law is that it was designed to protect average Americans from state actors. State actors, loosely defined as government officials, police, military, elected officials. And now we have elected officials using this law against average Americans without meeting the basic requirement of this law, being that there has to be racial animus. There has to be a motivating factor based on race. But there was none present. They were never able to concoct or prove one. We're just going on feelings alone. And so they're claiming that because the language of the law says that there must be a conspiracy to intimidate by force or threat either a political candidate or somebody supporting a political candidate or voting for a political candidate. And so they're saying that we surely must have conspired to intimidate by threat or force to prevent them from supporting Joe Biden. That is how they loopholed using this archaic Ku Klux Klan law and resurrecting it, which is their word. They resurrected this law to hold conservatives accountable for threatening Democrats. And so it was our job to basically debunk this before a jury with very little tools to do it, because, and I'm telling you, Brad, I'm a regular person. I didn't even know the difference between a civil and a criminal matter. I've been through a crash course at Lawfare 101 over the last 4 years, but even being in trial, my goodness, I've never even been to the principal's office. So I'm sitting in a courtroom trying to figure out what's happening, what these terms are, what these words are. And I learned very quickly that the plaintiffs, had filed motions in limine, which limit us from being able to speak about things they don't want us to talk about. So they filed all these motions in advance of the trial. The judge approves them, gives them what they want. So then when we come in for our defense, oh, can't talk about that. Oh, can't mention that. Oh, can't bring that up. Oh, can't. And it's like, well, what can we talk about exactly in this courtroom? Because they have 30 plus now, it started off as 20, now it's over 30 DC attorneys that have flown in for this case, 20 interns, their banker boxes, their tripods with their poster boards, their experts, this elaborate display of what horrible people we are. And we're walking in with a yellow legal pad and a pen and a prayer, a lot of prayers, years of prayers, hoping for a chance to just tell the jury the truth. And they're like,
Okay, so the people in the bus then, were they Black? I mean, I'm trying to understand, because if the only premise that has to be validated is that you are going after a minority group specifically for this to apply to this Ku Klux Klan law, then would that mean, I guess, I guess any minority group or any group that you have targeted specifically because they're part of the group. But is that what this bus was filled with? Was a bunch of black people that were trying to go vote, and suddenly you're trying to keep them from doing that? Or
No.
or who exactly was on the bus? How many were on the bus? And what was their intent while they were driving the bus? Where were they going? What were they up to?
Right. So great question, because the media would want everybody to believe that it was a bus full of African American individuals on their way to vote. In fact, we've heard that blatant lie before, a tandem with the fact that we ran it off the road, right? People believe we actually ran the bus off the road, which literally never happened. So the bus driver was black, and one of the people suing us, it was only filled with 4 people, because this was during 2020, during COVID, right? So they were doing social distancing. And so they didn't want to have too many people on the bus. So they had Wendy Davis, she ran for governor of Texas. She's a former state senator, and at the time was running for Congress against Chip Roy. And then David Gins, who later went on to work for Kamala Harris in the White House. And then a 4th backup bus driver was the 4th individual, and he was like sleeping in the back of the bus. So the 3 people who were awake and present at that time sued us, along with another campaign staffer who wasn't even there. He heard about it, and that's what gave him emotional damage, because he was supposed to be there, but missed his opportunity to get on the bus that left without him. And having heard that he could have potentially been there, that gave him emotional damage. They're not even, I mean, these were white people, with the exception of the bus driver. These are white people, and they're suing pretty diverse group of people. There are several defendants that are minorities. And so it's like, it's the biggest joke around. They're not even playing by the rules. We see that all the time. So I wish I had an answer for you that made sense, but unfortunately they just do what they want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it didn't have to make sense. I didn't expect it to make sense. Actually, I assumed that your answer was going to be what you just stated. But I just was trying to understand how they were shoehorning this thing into, or at least trying to somehow justify. And the truth is, the sad, scary, frightening, horrific truth is, if you are an attorney general, if you are a prosecutor or a state prosecutor, whatever, judge, whatever, you don't have to obey by any rules. You can put it out there and see if it sticks.
That's
You
what
can give,
happened, Brad.
you
I
can do
think
it.
I can more
Yeah.
pointedly answer your question just with you setting up that next train of thought, that we had an Obama appointed judge. He pushed it through the federal court system for 4 years. We filed 3 motions to dismiss it. And even after going to the higher court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, with a writ of mandamus saying, this is abusive and they have not met the requirements of using this law, it should be dismissed. We need your help. They agreed with us. This 3-panel of judges agreed with us and said, you're right, it should be dismissed. File another motion to dismiss with this judge and he'll do the right thing, we're sure of it. And he still did not dismiss the case. In fact, in a summary judgment motion, the judge said that in modern law, you have to reinterpret old laws to apply them to make them make sense, which is untrue. We learned that with Patriot Academy, that what our founding fathers said they meant, but the judge takes one step farther and goes, but we don't even need to do that in this case, because it is an exact likeness to the Ku Klux Klan in the 1800s. And he references a crime in the 1800s where the Ku Klux Klan on horseback overturned a wagon of Republican women who were going to vote and killed them, and said that we were an exact likeness to that case. And so the case would not be dismissed, that it would go before a jury, and it wouldn't be hard for a jury to find us guilty of these things.
And here's the thing. We don't even have to contemplate anymore. Gee, American citizen can just be indicted willy-nilly by somebody with more power and more money and
Yes.
with an agenda, but here's the thing. All bets are off. Once they indicted Trump, once they indicted the president of the United States over something that the statute of limitations had gone, it had already been dismissed. There was no charges that had ever been filed under this criteria ever in history.
Right.
And they went ahead and said, I'm going to file these charges against a president. Forget Forget any sense of you've got the Constitution on your side, you're American citizen, but fear not, because liberty is sacrosanct. If they went after the top guy of
Yep.
American citizens, all bets are off.
Mhm.
We're all now. It's just a matter of who's in charge and who they decide to target this time.
That's right.
So, so I'm not going to make it as simple as, I don't want this to happen to you, John Smith over there in Missouri. So get on the bandwagon, make sure you understand what happened so it doesn't happen to you. So I guess let's try to figure out some of the details of the trial, maybe that
Sure.
be of interest to people. So we now know that we have a judge that was Obama appointed. So we obviously know he's a left-leaning judge. So he doesn't want you to speak or have freedom,
Mhm.
and he wants to use his power to do what he can to keep you from having that freedom. He made an indictment based on a scenario that had happened in the 1800s and said that, when they killed these people, it's just like what you did when you followed behind a bus. So there's no logic or reason to this at all.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm getting at. So legally,
Mhm.
then maybe you don't know all this information, but I'm sure you're pretty much, like you said, an expert, a lay expert now. I mean, don't they have to have some criteria, some parameter that fits a particular formula for an indictment to be able to go forward? I mean, you can't just make something up. There has to be some criteria, right? As to, it has to have A, B, and C, and it has to be part of C, D, and F or whatever. And then it fits this particular indictment, and thus we can move forward. So what did they say
Mhm.
you did that they believed could fit? I mean,
Mhm.
you kind of mentioned the Ku Klux Klan and the Republican women, but
Yeah.
technically, what did they
Mhm.
say they felt made this equivalent that they could move it forward?
Right. Well, you're right that we have to be concerned about the fact that the six of us that went before that jury, the six defendants, we represent the American people. We represent free speech. Free speech went on trial before that jury. It had very little to do with us. It's what they want to be able to do to other Americans. And so we really need to be paying attention to the enemy's playbook here and what they're doing and what they want to be able to do to other Americans, not to live in fear, but to be alert, aware, and to stand boldly in these times. And what we learned in this trial is that to substantiate this claim, they said we conspired to intimidate minorities from voting, which is the verbiage in the law. They had to prove a conspiracy. In a civil case, they give the example that if you're looking at a scale, the plaintiffs need to just tip the scale just a little bit more than not to prove their case. It's not black and white. It's not like a
But
crime.
let me stop you here, only because I think that I can keep it a little bit more precise as people
Okay.
listening. So
Okay.
that you said there that essentially you are keeping people from voting. Nobody
But
was
in a,
voting.
no, they'd
They weren't
already
going to
voted.
vote. So how
They'd
did that fit?
already voted, which we learned later. They were not on their way to vote. That did not fit. It's just the conspiracy. That word, they hung everything on conspiracy. And they were trying to say that because we were part of a Facebook group called the Trump Train New Braunfels, that we engaged in a conspiracy to go out and do this. And so we're thinking,
Define conspiracy.
so conspiracy would be where two or more persons agree to either violate a law or take action, right? And it's an agreement where two or more come together. So in the trial, we're saying, well, we didn't even know these people that we're getting sued with at that time. We only know them now that we're getting sued. And their expert witnesses come in and say, you don't actually have to know anybody to engage in a conspiracy. And you can engage in a conspiracy unknowingly. And they use the example that that's how wolves kill prey, is that one wolf howls, the rest come out and kill the moose in silent agreement. And so I'm telling you, they're really not substantiating the claims, but they use Facebook posts, what we liked, if it was a meme that we shared, if somebody else said it and we laughed at it, to support the fact that we must have conspired because we laughed at things that would
Joeylynn,
be some. I'm sorry.
Joeylynn,
Okay.
I have to stop you only
Okay.
because
I'm sorry,
I'm
Brad.
no, you didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
No. I'm stopping you because I don't think I think my mind shut down after you said part of their argument was wolves
Yeah.
can go into the wilderness and one kills somebody and next thing you know they're using wolves
Yes.
as a precedent
Hmm.
for your behavior in a conspiracy to
Hmm.
follow a bus.
Yes.
And again, I know you were the one that was there. You were the ones that your freedom was at stake, your reputation was at stake. So I don't have to convince you the absurdity of that because you had to live it. But if that is what the justice system has become,
Hmm.
that I can now say, listen, here's the problem. As you know, snails are very slow. And the fact that you took your time to help that person who was in distress, and they ended up dying because you didn't rush to their aid, but kind of went slowly, just like a snail. Eventually, the French are going to decide, I'll bet they'd be good to eat. And we all laugh because it's so absurd. But essentially, that when you are making crap up
Yeah.
that has no correlation to logic, reason, law, humanity, case law, coherence. Again, Joeylynn, I know, I have nothing to tell you that you didn't have to existentially
Yeah.
live. But I
Yeah.
guess what I'm really getting at, honestly, and we laugh at crazy because it helps us get through. I don't know if there's anything more terrifying than to realize that there really isn't justice
Hmm.
anymore.
Hmm.
There really isn't law
Hmm.
anymore in America because now they have broken all the rules because they have one agenda
Yep.
to destroy their enemies.
Yes.
So I didn't mean to again stop your scenario, but it's kind of like once I heard part of what was their experts assessment as to how you fit into this category of a conspiracy by using wolves, I realized this isn't even, they're not even trying.
Hmm.
They're not trying to be logical or coherent. They're
Right.
simply throwing out every crazy thing because they have no case.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's
Can I just add one
please,
thought to that?
please, because
With the
I need a chance before I hit myself on the head with a hammer.
I just want to paint the picture for the American people.
Yeah.
Again, not to live in fear, but to be aware that while they're substantiating the conspiracy, because there wasn't one, right? So first of all, there wasn't one, so they have to create one.
Yeah.
They're using Facebook posts from years prior. I'm talking on some of the defendants, they were going years back, 2016. And then years later, 2021, 2022. Well, putting it as evidence in the courtroom. Why did you laugh at this post that somebody else made saying that Joe Biden sniffs children? Like, that's real evidence that's happening in the courtroom. Why did you laugh at that? And then the experts are saying, well, conspiracy theorists are extremists and they believe things like Joe Biden is a pedophile. So when they laugh at stuff like that, they feel a responsibility to take matters into their own hands and act in extremist tendencies to engage in a conspiracy to prevent people from voting to save their nation. That's really the kind of conversation that's happening in the courtroom. So then you're sitting there thinking, I can never laugh at another meme on Facebook again.
Okay, so they are doing everything they can to basically prove what they had to prove was it was conspiracy, I guess, is
Mm-hmm,
what you're
mm-hmm,
saying. Yes.
mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so they had to prove that you guys conspired. You all got together nefariously on Facebook, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and said we need to get out there and we need to keep these people from voting. Now, was there any kind of voting happening that day?
No, sir, there was not.
So where did the voting come in?
Early election season. So it's kind of a sweeping um,
So they could
assumption.
have
But it
So
was
they,
proven that they had all already voted. Everybody that was on the bus had already voted. They're
okay.
claiming we intimidated people, onlookers, from wanting to vote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the part I didn't
Yeah.
understand, because it's
Yeah.
like if they didn't vote or there was nothing to vote for or they had already voted,
Right.
they have to have some pretend reality to attach to this, or it
Yeah.
just does. There's has to be, unless we're like you said, a kangaroo court, and
Mhm.
we're at a regime now where they don't need to do anything but just say you're guilty and that's that.
Right. Right.
All right, so now they're doing that, and of course you were part of the Trump train, which, as you said, was very much something happening nationwide, and it was basically usually a bunch of pickup trucks and American flags and Trump flags, just usually just in a big train, just saying we're pro-Trump. It wasn't even
Right.
necessarily having anything to do with Biden and Harris. They weren't even
Correct.
normally in the picture. But you guys were part of that, and you were basically following them in your First Amendment right to say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I see who you're supporting with this wrapped bus that says Biden Harris. Just want to let you know, here's who I'm supporting."
Yeah.
Which is what free speech actually is. And of
That's right.
course, they didn't want to hear that. How did the guy that said, had I been on the bus, I would have been emotionally scarred? How could that in any world be considered relevant?
Well, great question. It's not. They expected to win in the process by completely squashing us before we ever even made it to trial. And that plaintiff dropped his case against us only days before we headed to the trial. So he never even made it to the courtroom. And we subpoenaed him to put him on the stand as a witness. And he fought it, and the judge ruled in his favor that he did not have to come. So
Okay. So,
I do want to say, I think we talked about on the last episode, there was a white staffer car following the bus and it hit a truck with a Trump flag. Did we touch on that?
no.
Okay. So the bus was driving with a white car behind it, like a tail car. And the bus and the car were swerving in and out of traffic, driving sporadically, speeding up, slowing down. And the bus made a lane change, and the white car whipped right in behind him and just slammed into a truck with a Trump flag. I didn't see it that day, but I've seen the videos of it, and so many times since we've been in court. And the truck barely pushes the car back, and then they both keep driving. So it's kind of like their tires rubbed, and they both kept going. Well, mainstream media shows that video that was captured from a Trump supporter who was filming that day, and only shows the truck push the car back and kind of on a loop, right? So they say that the vehicles were playing bumper cars and slamming people off the road, which is completely fabricated. The Biden staffer caused the accident. The FBI actually even investigated it. And so, anyways, that person not in court either. Surprise, surprise. And the traffic expert that the plaintiffs hired to patch that up in court, because we brought that evidence, right? Said that, well, the accident wouldn't have happened if Trump supporters weren't on the road that day. If the truck wasn't there to show its support for Trump, then it wouldn't have gotten hit. So it's actually y'all's fault that that happened.
You know, you'd be shocked to know this, and I'm not a traffic expert, Julian. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, did you know that every traffic accident that has ever happened in human history wouldn't have happened if that truck or car or trolley decided not to go on the road that day? We literally could have ended all of the horrible traffic deaths that this terrible modern society has created by creating cars. If we decided nobody drives today, I'll bet you, and I could be wrong, but I'll bet you there would be no traffic fatalities that day. So, okay, so I'm trying to navigate emotionally, wanting to laugh and mock and ridicule
Yeah.
this absurdity. But here's the sober reality. The fact this got to court, the fact that DC lawyers and or interns flew on
Yep.
their own dime to support this case, to try to beat this case, to try to win this case, because they had an agenda.
Yep.
We can beat this. We can take this all over the country.
Yep.
The fact that a regular person like you suddenly is thrown into a scenario that not only is frightening to you as a citizen and as a free person who wants to remain so, but now you have to come up with the money to defend yourself. And it could happen to anybody at any time at a whim because you're on the wrong side of the culture war that is being controlled by the left, is the point of this whole case, conversation, and you're my dialogue, is how long until a similar case is educated for complainant, you know. In other words, if it had gone that direction, it just digs us deeper and deeper and deeper into a place that we can never return, which is liberty and freedom.
That's right.
Because they now control even the concept of justice, because we will choose who we will indict, who we won't, who we will convict, who we won't. And that is a banana republic. That is a third world country. That is a totalitarian regime. That is a despot. That is a ruler. That is a monarch. That is Stalin. That is Marx. That is everything that has proven historically to be the most evil, destructive, and destruction of the human flourishing that has ever taken place is by people who have to silence speech to get their way, because people ain't buying this. You can't convince me to give up my liberties, but I can do it with a potential bayonet. And so, you know, you okay. So, I mean, I'm not sure there's any, I mean, I think the absurdities you brought up are really kind of speak for themselves. So what would you say was, and maybe it's obvious, but what would you say was then your defense lawyer's retort to these things? What do you think was his strongest arguments against things, or maybe even something that's beyond just this obvious that you weren't voting or whatever, perhaps from a meta perspective? What was the arguments you think had the most impact potentially for the future of liberty for potential other people who might be sued down the road? Tell me some things he brought to the table you think have even more potential power to help those of us who might find ourselves in this situation.
Yes, I love this question. What I loved about our attorney's opening remarks to the jury is that he was so confident that they were, quote, ahead of their own skis so much that the jury was going to see that this elaborate demonstration would essentially be exactly what we would use in our own defense to prove their lies and how ridiculous this was. That the evidence they'd be submitting would be exactly what the jury would need to see to vindicate us from these lies. And in closing arguments, the prosecuting attorneys said to the jury how much easier it is to prove a conspiracy with Facebook, with social media, and with text message threads, which I thought was very telling, again, when the enemy shows his hand. And in our defense counsel's closing remarks, what I appreciated is that they told the jury, I think you can see who the wolves are in this courtroom. And it was obvious that we had been hunted like prey, that we were being sued for laughing at a meme on Facebook, for flying a flag on a public highway in the same space as the Biden bus, even without being able to have a proper defense with all the restrictions and objections we had. The jury still could see it. And so our attorney told the press as soon as we walked out of the courthouse, this was a spectacular failure on the plaintiff's part to try and stop the movement of the Trump train across America. And it did not stand. And I believe that that's true. It became more and more evident in that courtroom that they did not have hurt feelings. They were after free speech rights. They were circumventing the Constitution. And Brad, you know, since we've been sued 4 years ago, in the last 4 years, the same groups are suing Carrie Lake for questioning the integrity of the election in Arizona, Dinesh D'Souza for the 2000 Mules documentary exposing the election. They have sued door knockers and canvassers in Colorado because these groups call people and say, we think we have a case. Do you want in? And people are like, sure, let's try it. And so they're calling homeowners saying, did any Republicans come and knock on your door asking you to vote for their candidate? Did that give you emotional damage? You may be entitled to a large sum of money if we sue them under the Ku Klux Klan law. So this is popcorning up across the United States. And so it was necessary to get this win to take a huge step in the right direction of making sure that precedent was not set.
There were suits of them wanting to take convict. What do you mean? Indict those who were canvassing.
Yes.
Door to door
in Colorado, under the Ku Klux Klan law. Yes.
I mean, how would they? Well, again, I guess I guess it's futile to even seek logic right now because
Right.
it's not. I was going to say, well, how would somebody not just turn around and say, well, but this guy came to me with the Democrat thing. Can I sue him now?
Right.
So I don't
Right.
know even where that would seem trickier because it's like clearly there would have been Democrat canvassers as well. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is
Mhm.
that we have to realize that what's happening worldwide,
Yep.
let alone America, is an an absolute unleashing of demonic forces worldwide that
Mhm.
have completely blinded the logic, the reason, the coherence of humans to see things clearly. We know that with the transgender or with other things where obviously things that are true need to be questioned or even abandoned. So this is so much deeper than just one little case or one. And of course, you're in that case, it ain't a little case, but still, I'm just
Mhm.
making a bigger point than
Yes.
one case or one election or one constitutional inquiry. This is bigger than that. It's trying to question reality itself and how God made the world work and how we are supposed to treasure that and keep that sacred.
Yes.
So you did the hard work. You chose to fight. What was your option?
Total failure, or possibly total failure, but at least we died trying, right? I mean, it we knew we were up against a monster. The odds were not in our favor, looking at it with human eyes. But as Christians, we knew the truth was on our side, and God is truth. God is justice. He is the supreme court, the supreme ruler, the authority over everything, the model in which our government and justice system is shaped after. And
Mm.
so it's like, well, we're going to believe God's going to go before us, that the victory has already been established, and we're going to walk into it to receive it. But our logic was telling us they've done everything they can to rig the scales, the literal scales of justice, to rig the system. How far does God want to take this? How many losses are we going to have to take before we get an even bigger win, an even more precedent setting win? We expected to be in the Fifth Circuit and possibly the Supreme Court, but we
Well, could
knew,
you have uh, settled?
yes, they
So
tried to
what would
force us to settle. In
what?
fact, they strong armed us and we fought that.
But what would
Um,
that have entailed? Let's say you
well,
chose to do that. What would that have meant?
that meant we apologized and we gave them what they were asking for, which I'm not allowed to disclose because of the gag order. But I can tell you that it's egregious, it's outrageous, it's laughable, it's a slap in the face to every single person that has supported us. And I would die before I gave them what they wanted. So,
So had you said, okay, we will plead guilty, and then they would have what given you uh, uh, probation or something? Or I mean, what would have
no,
been potentially the result of that if you had pleaded guilty, I
it,
guess, or whatever?
in theory, it would have just been over. So, because there aren't criminal charges, we wouldn't have had probation. In the terms they wanted us to agree on, we would have had to fulfill them, financially or in other ways, and then write an apology letter. Excuse me, sign an apology letter that they wrote. They would publish that, say that they won. Then we would lose our dignity, our reputation. God would not receive the glory. It'd be catastrophic, I think, for what it would what it would represent. And there were two defendants that did settle, and I do not mean to disparage them at all. They were very young. One girl was 18 years old when she got sued, and her fiance was a year younger. He was 17, but they didn't add him until almost 2 years later, right? And so they've got these young people that don't have legal representation, overwhelmed, feeling the weight of the I know that weight they're feeling, and I had an attorney to represent me, right? And so all they did was sign an apology. They didn't even do anything except just apologize.
And all they did was just drive around. They weren't even involved in any of they weren't part of the truck that got bumped
Correct.
or.
That's correct. That's correct. And so they apologized and moved on with their lives. But then when the trial moved around, they were subpoenaed and told that they may have to come on the witness stand to testify against the remaining defendants. And two of them were the young girl's parents, right? And it's like, so conflicting. Like, I apologized. I'm trying to imagine what she's thinking. I apologized so that you'd let me out of this. I signed your letter. Now you want me to come and say that my parents did something wrong, because essentially the letter that she signed assumes responsibility. And if they're trying to prove a conspiracy and she's agreed to it just to get out of it, and then they put her up on the stand to testify against her parents who were trying to fight this that she's agreed to just so she could be out of it, it's an ever loving nightmare. And
Yeah.
I can't imagine the strain and the duress on that poor family, but her parents stayed in and fought.
So she just said, I ain't doing that. I'm not testifying or what?
Well, she was subpoenaed and she agreed to coming in. She was never called on the stand, though. And I think that that's telling that the plaintiffs never put her on the stand because they don't want the truth to come out.
Right. Do you believe that the jurors were sympathetic? In other words, were they Trump supporters, you think? Do you think, I mean, you were in Austin, that's very blue, part
Right.
of Texas. But, and I'm guessing when they make jury selection, they're trying to find
Right.
people that aren't going to be biased, but everybody's
Correct.
biased. Everybody has a presupposition. But, you know, I guess you could have been like Trump in New York,
Right.
where you didn't have a chance. They went in already saying you're guilty. I don't care what I hear. So did you feel that they honestly were trying to assess this objectively and just be a good citizen and try to make the right decision?
Oh yeah. It was we prayed. We had a 30-day prayer journey with the community around us, praying over the trial and our jury before we ever got to court. We were praying months ago, probably before these people were even selected. It's no doubt in my mind God handpicked that jury, and they were outstanding citizens that took their role seriously. And I do believe they remained objective. They were a hard jury to read. There wasn't a lot of emotion. They kept themselves pretty neutral. We weren't really sure how they were feeling. So it was an incredibly refreshing sensation when the jury announced, their verdict.
Yeah.
But you're right. In the jury selection process, there were 55 jurors that were called in, and the first question the plaintiffs asked were, "Who here is pro-life?" And then all the conservatives just shoot their hand up with total pride. I am, and then they're writing juror number 18, juror number 27, and those people are getting struck right off the bat. We ask the question, who here is pro-choice? Nobody raises their hand. They are so much more strategic. They don't wear their heart on their sleeve, right? So we're getting people whose jury questionnaire says Trump's a fascist, hands off my uterus. But when you ask them who here is pro-choice, nobody's raising their hand. It was
Were they allowed to ask them if they had voted for Trump?
The question was, could a reasonable person vote for Trump? Could a reasonable person
So
vote
they
for
weren't
Biden?
asking them
Correct.
personally. They were just making a broad statement, and that's how they are able
That's
to
right.
try to
That's
get
right.
some information. So do you
That's right.
believe that any of those jurors may have not been a Trump supporter?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. I do think that in retrospect or during the trial, I could see sympathy being applied to the plaintiff's claim or their experts. You can kind of sometimes see some like head nodding or, just that body language that kind of indicates interest. But I just don't think it was enough, even for them to align politically with those people. I think they were still objectively able to see that there was not a case here. This was an abuse, and it was um I think that if I had to go out on a limb and guess, I would think that our jury felt a responsibility to defend us from the attack that was happening. It just seems obvious to me that they deliberated for 2 days on the case, right? So they didn't come back with an answer or a verdict very quickly. There were many questions that they had while they were working through the questionnaire. And for them to come back with that finding, I think that there was probably arguments that had to take place. I think there was probably some jurors that had to convince one another. But by the end, I think that they understood what was going on.
They come back and they say not guilty to conspiracy.
Right.
Okay. You're ecstatic, you're excited. I guess theoretically, could they have appealed the
Yes.
non-guilty?
Yes. So there were 6 of us defendants. The jury did assign fines to one defendant, and it was the man who drove the black truck that got hit by the white staffer car. And I think that it's very plain and obvious to see that when they are only presented with very certain facts, we're very limited in our defense with the defense counsel and the defendants. And then you've got this traffic expert assigning the blame to this driver, even when it's not his fault. The jury's confused, right? I think that that's fair to see. And so that defendant's attorney stood up and said, I object to the assignment of these fines, right? And he plans to appeal that to the Fifth Circuit, and without a doubt, he's going to win.
Good.
Oh yeah, oh he will. The
That's
plaintiffs did not have any objections, which was interesting. They marked no objections, and you're right. If they had marked objections, they could appeal that decision, but they didn't.
okay.
And so I think we have about a 95% win here. We need 100% win, but no doubt it will happen.
So it's the only thing you feel left to be vindicated is this guy shouldn't have to pay any money.
This man should not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to really ask you about, you said in the very beginning that the Constitution, was that what you said?
Yes.
Wasn't allowed to be brought up?
Correct.
Was it the Constitution or the First Amendment? What, wait a minute, please explain that to me.
It was both. The Constitution and the First Amendment were part of the plaintiff's motions in limine to be prevented from being discussed in the courtroom or used as any evidence for the jury's consideration.
How?
And the judge ruled in that favor.
How is it constitutional to say you can't use the Constitution? No, I mean, I'm not even trying to be flippant or even sarcastic. How is that? How can you not use the First Amendment, which is your foundation for what you believe you are fighting for, to be eliminated as an option to unpack so that the jury can see, here's why we think this fits into the single first right given to us in the United States as freemen. I don't understand. And again, maybe you don't, I'm not trying to make you go beyond your pay grade, but
no, it concerns me because
how can they justify you can't talk about the Constitution? I don't even understand how that's possibly feasible.
Well, it's what is extremely concerning, even beyond that. It's like, okay, well, maybe they could even go that far as to omit it, which is still a miscarriage of justice. But most people don't know it. They don't know the Constitution. They don't know the First Amendment. They don't know the Bill of Rights. They don't know what their rights are. So it's not like we can count on them to pull from a well of knowledge they don't have and just apply it anyways. It's like that would need to be a directive, like, please consider we have a constitutional right to free speech as listed here. And we were not able to do that. And you can't count on the average person to just know that. Unfortunately, our society has been so dumbed down.
No, but I mean, is there, again, it's a couple laymen, you know, even though you're much more advanced now because of what you had to learn, but I just simply don't understand how you could. It sounds to me like an automatic loss if you appeal to a appellate court as a saying, how can I not use the First Amendment?
It is.
Anytime I want to use the First Amendment is about I can use it anytime I want.
Without
That's
censorship.
what it means.
That's the point. Yeah.
So so I'm just trying to find out, what am I missing that would allow a judge to say you can't even discuss the First Amendment? It doesn't make it. I'm just make it make sense.
You're right. I can't, but it would win on appeal. That's the whole thing. It's like you have to go through this torturous process of this ridiculous trial based on emotions and the omission of facts and rights, and hope to get far enough to a higher court that actually references case law and upholds the law and the Constitution to see that victory, which is the path that the remaining defendant will have to take to, correct those fines that were assigned to him.
Is there any mechanism where one can look at a judge making egregious, unconstitutional edicts and errors and bias, that judge, that can be used as a potential impeachment of that judge? Is there any rectifying?
The 1960s Civil Rights Acts provide immunity to judges that essentially allow them to behave in this way, and they've become so emboldened and so arrogant and shameless in it. They have this sense of security that needs to be amended. There needs to be an amendment to that law. That's what I was doing at Coach Congress when you and I saw each other over the summer. Is I was there with another woman and we're trying to figure out how to amend these laws, the Ku Klux Klan Law, the Civil Rights Law, to protect people from this abuse of power and this immunity that is with the judicial, the weaponized judicial system.
And do you know of any, now that this amazing, God, thank you, Jesus, vindication took place,
Yes.
have you heard of any other cases or any other people who are saying, oh, we're already using that? Or, I mean, have you seen it bear any fruit outside of your case yet?
Sorry, are you talking about the Ku Klux Klan Law? Or
Yeah, or, you know, you being free from that as a precedent for what you did. Is anybody able now
oh,
to use that to help their case yet? Or
I haven't gotten to hear that yet, and it's only been, you know, a week and a couple days since we've received this verdict. I've really, all my research has been finding all the other people this has been used against, and those cases are still kind of unfolding. But I noticed, I saw a video of Kamala Harris's bus driving around New York City and Trump supporters lining the roads with Trump flags and Trump signs. And I'm over here thinking, praying for the people in the crowd to God would protect them from the Ku Klux Klan Law, because it almost
wow.
seems like a bait and switch. And so
Yeah,
are we
yeah.
going to hear in a couple years that these poor people have been going through that? And if so, I hope and pray that we are the case law they can look to get that case dismissed.
And the moment the jury said, we find the defendants not guilty, tell me, explain to us what happened, how you felt, what you said, what you did. I mean, I think we can presume, but no, tell us what happened for you.
Oh man. 4 years of emotions comes up. This freedom that I never valued before I got sued, because it wasn't until I got sued that I learned I had a constitutional right to free speech. So the only time I ever understood what those freedoms were, they had already been stomped on and taken from me. So this is the first time I'm experiencing freedom, understanding the cost. And Rick Green loves to remind me of Thomas Paine in The American Crisis, where he's quoted saying that what is obtained too cheaply is esteemed too lightly, and that heaven knows how to put a proper goods on freedom. It's what it's referring to, but how to put a proper price on its goods. And so it's like I was feeling the price on its goods. It was not esteemed lightly because it had not been obtained cheaply. It cost so much and it felt phenomenal. And yet still we feel the weight of the torture of the last 4 years. So you want it to be like a light switch. We're free. It's over. This feels amazing. But it's like they've taken so much. They robbed us of so much time, so much money, so much energy. And how do you get that back? How do you reacclimate to society as a regular person? What do you do now when you're not in a permanent fight or flight mode? And so there's an adjustment period, but there's nothing like singing the praises of God in victory, of going through the Psalms and looking at all the notes and all the underscores of all the prayers I prayed and the Psalms I read about, Lord, fight for me, Lord, uphold justice with your right hand, like win this fight for us. And then now getting to sing the celebration Psalms of a won victory, unparalleled, phenomenal. But, you know, the plaintiffs walk out of the courthouse and the press is waiting for them, not for us. They're waiting for them. And they're doing this like loser press 101 where it's like, well, you know, it was a great day for democracy because we've set the example that if you try to intimidate somebody, this is what's going to happen. They're trying to put the spin on it, but we're in the background just hugging each other, throwing our arms around each other, crying, thumbs up, taking our own pictures and celebrating what this really means for America. It's hard to put into words. It still feels surreal.
Was it worth it?
Yes, I wouldn't change it for anything, Brad. They meant to process us, to punish us in the process, but God refined us in the fire of the process. And we are better humans for it. We're aware of our freedoms. We have a purpose and a mission, and we get to do this with other people like you. And I mean, there were people who learned about our story through Patriot Academy coaches that flew in to attend our trial. They said they wanted to give of their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor to be there to support us while we did that, because they understood how this impacted so many people. I wouldn't change that for the world. God has shown that his hand still moves mightily. I know that, you know that, but there were onlookers that maybe needed to know that, that needed to see that. And we stand as a modern day David before Goliath, whether that's a personal problem, a government problem, whether that's defending your basic rights. getting up and facing the day. God is with you in the impossible. And if you can just put one foot in front of the other, he secures the victory. You get to walk through and receive it.
Everybody uses the David and Goliath story as a perfect metaphor for, so many challenges that people have endured over the years. The little guy against the giant and still overcomes the underdog and so forth and so on. But David had to first have righteous indignation. He had to say, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that would have the audacity
Woo.
to speak against the living God? Where are the men? Because he's looking at these guys going, I ain't doing it. And he's going, pfft. Two, he didn't just run in there and say, I'll take him down like an idiot. He
Right.
said, I'm going to go find me not one, not two stones, about 5.
Mm.
And they're going to be smooth. And they're going to be a certain weight and a certain texture, because I do this a lot, but I know exactly which one flies the best, which one is the best weapon, the best use of these. I know how to do this, but I'm going to have a backup in case I miss the first stone. I'll have a couple more to shoot for. I only have so much time, so I'm going to think this through. I'm going to know what I'm fighting for, but try to do it as effectively and prudently as I can. And then he had to decide to cross the brook alone, put the stone in the sling, and get into battle where he could have been killed. In other words, even with the victory that we all give to God, and certainly should,
Yep.
you as the human still have to fight
Yes.
on your own. You have a partnership in this that God expects of you. It's your turn to get on the cross.
That is good.
And if you don't understand that right now, listening or watching this, that this is now what it means to be a Christian in America, that when you hear the word Christian, I want you to rethink it as a new, fresh term. You're a disciple. That's what he's asked you to be. You were never asked to be a Christian. You were never called to make Christians. You were called to make disciples, a discipline, the difficulty of what it means. No longer to bow your head, close your eyes, raise your hand, but fear not, no one is looking, because we don't want to embarrass you. That weak, spineless, cowardly Christianity that allowed you to crumble the moment you faced an adversity, because you didn't come into this knowing what was at stake and saying, I will pay the cost. Those days are over. You can't be a Christian in America like that anymore. You will be weeded out. That is a guarantee. We need warriors like Joeylynn and her husband and her family and those who prayed and believed and who got into battle, took her stones and said, here we go, Lord, I believe in you. But nevertheless, the battle's on and I'm scared. And you know what? That's okay. Being scared isn't Christian. God does always say, fear not. But he says, fear not, because we're fear.
Right.
So he says, look, I get it, but fear not, I go before you. But courage isn't not having fear. Courage is having fear and then fighting and saying, but my God reigns. That's what you did as a representative of the living God first, as an American, as a human being, as a warrior woman and a warrior husband. And we need desperately people like you to lead the way, because this is what's coming for the next who knows how many years, until or unless God intervenes and returns America back to its knees to give God the glory again and to humble ourselves. And you're part of that change. So God bless you for that. I'm glad that I donated some to you, because I get a piece of the reward. God said I get a piece.
Amen.
I gotta give one last question for my subscribers that I give only to them. Those
That's
who are
right.
part of the Mighty 10,000, it's $3 a month to get these extra questions and join the militia of the mind as we fight to become disciples for Christ. So the last question I will give just for my special folks is this. So it cost you a lot of money to go to this, and I'm sure you had donations, and perhaps you had some pro bono. I don't know what happened exactly, but I know you had to pay your lawyer. He didn't do it free. So, and I'm surprised you couldn't find a religious liberties lawyer, but maybe it's because it didn't fit that category. I don't know.
Yep.
But anyways, can you now say, you know what, you guys are going to pay me back for this frivolous, unwarranted lawsuit that cost me tens of thousands of dollars, and you are going to pay me for that? Is that something that you can possibly pursue?
So that is
Hey guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstine.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the militia of the mind, it is the warrior level, or it is the special forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the Mighty 10,000. Please look at her website, so that if you do want to donate, if you do want to hear, if you do want to pray, if you do want to get involved, if you do want to see what's up stake, so that you can perhaps help your community in potential similar situations, right? Do you have a site or something
yes.
that we?
Yes, it's freespeechdefender.com.
Okay,
Freespeechdefender.com.
perfect. So go to freespeechdefender.com, donate if you feel led, pray for sure, either way, and maybe participate in it, folks. I don't know what the future holds in America as we film this. We're a month away from a new election, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. We don't know who's going to win. I know that God wins every time, but I don't know who's going to win this election. I don't know where America is going to go, and I don't know what you have for us, Father. I do know that you said, when my people who call by my name will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, I'll pour out a blessing that they can't contain. You always want your people to, even the righteous ones, right? We're the righteous ones because of the blood of Christ. Be the ones that repent first, that humble themselves first.
Yes.
We know that only you help us become what you have called us to be.
Yes.
So we're grateful for it. We're grateful for people like Joeylynn and her family. We will continue to pray, and I will be on this site as a comic. So First Amendment free speech is a big, giant deal for me, because it's all about being able to speak what I believe is true. Christ first, and free speech second, maybe American third, and a free agent man fourth. But either way, that's what I'm fighting in trying to do. God bless you for what you've done. Thank you for coming back on and sharing this amazing moves. There are victories, and we need to continue them. Remember, if they ever say you were politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. It means you're actually fighting for freedom and liberty. I'm just a comic. She's just a regular old woman, but together we can turn the world upside down, just like the disciples did, because we serve the winner of every conflict. Remember, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm putting the woke back to sleep. I'll see you next time we meet.